Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Chorus Girl Quilting, and it's Show and Tell Sunday. And we're going to be fancy today. This is a quilt called All Dressed Up by Darlene Zimmerman. She is the designer, and this is one of my very first quilts after I really decided I wanted to start quilting. I was kind of doing a mental inventory a few days ago, and I realized actually I made 3 or 4 quilts before I ever, like, seriously got into it, um, but this was one of the very first ones when I really started getting into it. Um, the pattern looks like this, and here's an interesting note. I completed this quilt, the quilt top, in, like, 2021. I started it in late 2020 and finished it in 2021, and I did it all down at the Love Shack. And it's a combination of embroidery and piecing. And I don't know what you would call this, the whole hanky thing. um, but it's not exactly applique, but it's not exactly piecing either. And we're going to get a little personal here. You have to you make these little dresses out of these are antique hankies, some of which I had came from, the stash of one of my aunts, I think, after she passed away. But this is what it looks like. It's folded over, has a cute little rickrack trim, and you have to put snaps actually right onto the quilt. And you just embroider the shoulders and head and hat of these ladies here. And so that created some issues about how to get it quilted. And at the time, I didn't know anybody really that did machine quilting, and especially that did custom quilting, in that they just couldn't set up an edge to edge here because those snaps had to go on before the quilt was quilted. And I did find someone out in Overbrook, Kansas, which is west of us. I want to say, if you're familiar with Kansas, Lawrence, where University of Kansas is, it's kind of west and south of Lawrence a bit, if I've got my geography correct. But I went to that. I was doing a little shop hop, going around to local shops in our region, and was asking, does anybody do custom quilting? And the gals that worked there told me about a lady that does this. And so I got it to her, and she did some custom quilting. Some of it is free motion, and some of it I think might be digitized in just some small sections. Um, Handyman will get closer up here in just a little bit so we can show you the quilting and the borders. And the fabrics also we'll talk about in this are reproductions of, like, 1930s era prints, which likely would have been made and printed on feed sacks or flour sacks or sugar sacks. And it became a real thing. My Aunt Ruby and my mom remember going to the store, and you bought big sacks of flour and big sacks of sugar and feed and all of that in these cotton bags. And the makers of those bags got wise to the fact that they had these prints, and women would go buy their supplies and pick out bags based on the fabrics that they were made from. And they you could make clothes out of them, aprons, curtains, tablecloths, everything. And I have a few quilts in my collection that actually I think are made from feed sacks. These are reproductions. Um, a little history book. There's a little history book about um, feed sacks. It's called "The Colorful History of a Frugal Fabric: Feed Sacks" by Lindsay Cole McCrae. And in it, it has um, it shows 850 different patterns that were on feed sacks. It gives a little bit of the history of them. Um, and you can see you could make some really there were some actually really pretty little prints in these. Some of them some of the ones in this fabric collection are kind of juvenile. They have some little kids, like there's kids here playing with toys and stuff, and we'll show you the close-ups of that in just a minute. So, we're gonna switch out here, and Handyman's gonna come up closer and film some of this close up so you can see detail. Okay, so here we are, um, on the quilt here. Come on up close, Handyman. So here's one of the ladies. This is probably one of my favorite ones. I love the lime green and purple together. And so what I did is I looked at each of my handkerchiefs and coordinated their hat, ribbon, and flowers to match the hanky. And over here is one of these prints that I was talking about. It's kind of kid themed. There's all these little kids and they're baking and running around and playing with rolling pins and stuff. And then and there's some great all over prints here too, like over here to on this side, some fun prints there. And then here's another one of the kind of kid themed prints where they're playing with all kinds of different toys. And if you look closely, in these blocks where the ladies are. This is where I think this might be a digital pattern, but I don't really know this gal's method. She could very well have done these freehand, but they're so uniform, I think maybe she used some kind of digital guide for it. The border print, um, is likely either free motion quilted. There are people that can do that uniformly, or she might have used what is called a pantograph, which is a long strip of paper where there's kind of a stylus that you or a laser pointer that you follow that pattern and draw, but you're basically tracing that pattern with the stylus or laser, and the machine is quilting what you're tracing up there. Um, and on the back, I did have to piece this backing because I it wasn't quite this piece of fabric wasn't quite wide enough for the whole quilt, so I just added a couple of borders, and there you go. So this is oh, and just a little side note, I did take this to the 2022 Johnson County Fair, and it did receive a red ribbon there, which I thought was pretty exciting since it was one of my earliest quilts, and I was still, kind of working out the whole technique of, corners and nice sharp points and all of that. So, this is the all dressed up quilt. Thanks for watching. Um, and we will see you on Wednesday for what I'm working on Wednesday. Like, subscribe, share with your friends, and we'll see you then.